Hello everyone, in this video we will discuss the poem The Chimney Sweeper by William Blake. This poem is from his collection Songs of Innocence, and it is a poignant critique of the child labor that was prevalent during the late 18th century, particularly the exploitation of young chimney sweepers. Blake uses this narrative to explore themes of innocence, suffering, and redemption, framed within a stark portrayal of social injustice. Stanza 1. When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in suit I sleep. Explanation. The poem opens with a heart-wrenching introduction to the speaker, a young boy whose dire circumstances are quickly sketched. The loss of his mother and subsequent betrayal by his father, who sells him into the brutal life chimney sweeper, are depicted in stark terms. The repetition of weep phonetically mimics the sound of sweep and highlights the child's cry for help and his grim reality. Stanza 2. There's little Tom Decker, who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved. So I did. Hush, Tom, never mind it. For when your head's bare, you know that the suit cannot spoil your white hair. Explanation. The introduction of Tom Decker, another child chimney sweeper, continues the lamb imagery often used by Blake to symbolize innocence. The shaving of Tom's hair, which is linked to lambs, symbolizes the loss of innocence and identity. The speaker's attempt to comfort Tom reflects a coping mechanism against their harsh reality, showcasing a glimpse of childlike innocence and resilience. Stanza 3. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was sleeping, he had such a sight, that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. Explanation. Tom's dream introduces a vision of liberation from suffering. The imagery of young sweepers locked in coffins of black starkly contrasts with their living conditions, suggesting that for these children, freedom only comes in death. This grim metaphor underscores the severity of their exploitation. Stanza 4. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. Explanation. The appearance of an angel who frees the children from their coffins introduces a theme of divine intervention and redemption. The transformation from a grim, soot-filled existence to one of joyous play in nature, symbolized by green plain and the river, represents a heavenly or spiritual liberation from earthly suffering. Stanza 5. Then, naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom, if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. Explanation. The dream culminates in an ascension motif where the children are purified, naked and white, and ascend to the heavens, leaving behind the tools of their labor. The angel's promise to Tom connects moral behavior with divine reward, suggesting that enduring innocence and goodness amid suffering will lead to ultimate salvation. Stanza 6. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. Explanation. The return to reality at the poem's end contrasts sharply with the dream. Tom's newfound warmth and happiness, despite the cold and dark, suggests that the dream has fortified him against his dismal circumstances. The concluding moral, that dutifulness leads to security, carries an ironic undertone, highlighting that the discrepancy between the children's bleak reality and the comforting, yet potentially misleading assurances of religious and societal platitudes. Critical analysis. Themes: innocence and exploitation. Central to the poem is the theme of innocence, not only as a state of being, but as a condition that is exploited by society. The young chimney sweepers, represented by the narrator and Tom Decker, embody the purity and simplicity of childhood, which is cruelly betrayed by the adults who should be their protectors. The juxtaposition of their innocent acceptance of their fate with the harshness of their lives serves as a stark critique of societal norms that allow for such exploitation. Spiritual imagery and redemption. Blake uses strong Christian imagery, particularly in the vision of the angel who releases the children from coffins, symbolizing their liberation from the bondage of their labor. This spiritual redemption is significant as it offers a contrast to their earthly suffering, suggesting a realm where justice and peace prevail, in stark contrast to their brutal reality. Resilience and coping mechanisms. The poem also explores how children cope with dire circumstances through fantasy and internalization of societal values. Tom's dream provides a temporary escape from his misery, offering him comfort and even joy when he carries into his waking life. This aspect of the poem highlights the psychological resilience of children and how they find ways to endure and find happiness even in small measures. Imagery and symbolism. Coffins and angels. The imagery of children locked in black coffins vividly symbolizes the deathly nature of their work, suggesting that their lives in the sooty chimneys are akin to being buried alive. The angel with a key represents divine intervention, a symbol of hope and potential salvation, which starkly contrasts with the grim imagery of death. Lambs and white hair. The comparison of Tom's shaved head to a lamb's back invokes innocence and sacrifice. Lambs being traditional symbols of purity and victims of sacrifice. The suit not spoiling their white hair symbolizes the preservation of their inner purity despite the external corruption of their conditions. Structure and form. Blake's use of simple AABB rhyme scheme lends a sing-song quality to the poem, which is characteristic of nursery rhymes and children's songs. This stylistic choice enhances the innocence of the voice and contrasts deeply with the gravity of the content, thereby intensifying the poem's emotional impact. Comparison with other poems. The Chimney Sweeper from Songs of Experience by William Blake. Both poems are written by Blake and titled The Chimney Sweeper, dealing directly with the plight of child chimney sweepers. Each version explores the grim reality of child labor and critiques the social and institutional structures that perpetuate this exploitation. Differences: the version from Songs of Innocence focuses more on the innocence and hopeful vision of the children, despite their grim circumstances, incorporating spiritual visions of escape and redemption. In contrast, the Songs of Experience version is bleaker and more cynical, emphasizing the betrayal by parents and society with less emphasis on consolation. It portrays a more direct critique of the societal norms and religious hypocrisy. The Cry of the Children by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Similarities: both poems address the theme of child labor and the suffering of children forced into harsh working conditions at a young age. Browning, like Blake, uses powerful imagery and emotive language to draw attention to the plight of the obsessed children and to stir the reader's sympathy and outrage. Differences: Browning's poem is more direct and unambiguous in its social critique, using the real testimonies and situations of children in mines and factories to anchor her poem in contemporary social issues. Blake's approach incorporates symbolic and allegorical elements, using visions and spiritual metaphors to provide a layer of hope and transcendental meaning. Half Past Two by Uwe Fanthorpe. Similarities: both poems are centered around a child's perspective and explore themes related to the innocence and experiences of childhood. Each poet uses a specific child's situation to comment more broadly on themes of time, innocence, and understanding or misunderstanding by adults. Differences: Fanthorpe's poem deals with a child's experience of being punished in school and his incomprehension of adult concepts of time, which is more benign compared to the brutal realities of child labor discussed in Blake's poem. Half Past Two is more focused on the internal world and subjective experience of a child, whereas The Chimney Sweeper uses the child experience to critique broader societal injustices. So this was the discussion on the poem The Chimney Sweeper. We will meet in the next video and discuss some other poem. Until then, goodbye and thank you.